Most people think relationships break because of communication, but that's not actually what's happening. You can say all the right things, use all the right tools, and understand each other perfectly, and still feel completely alone in the same room. Because the real problem isn't communication, it's architecture. Think about it. Two people who both want love, both wanting to work, both genuinely care, and they keep missing each other. And not because they stopped trying per se, but because they are running completely different internal systems. And no one ever taught them how to read the others. Here's what most people don't realize about relationships. They don't live in peace, they live in tension between autonomy and connection, between safety and desire, between what you expect and what you actually give each other. The couples who make it work aren't the ones who avoid tension. They're the ones who've learned how to hold it without it destroying them. And most of us were never taught how to do that. So instead of holding tension, we try to eliminate it. And that's where things begin to fall apart. Every relationship sits somewhere on the spectrum. High expectation and low support. And you get pressure, and there's a sense of anxiety and a feeling that you might always be performing. There's high support, low expectation, and you get comfort, no real need for growth. The sweet spot is when both are high. But here's the thing that I've missed and countless people miss, including my clients, that takes capacity. And when the capacity isn't there, conflict ends up filling up the gap. And here's where things get really interesting. There's two people, same goal, completely different maps of reality. One sees a behavior and thinks that needs to change, and the other sees the same behavior and thinks, what's underneath that? One moves to control, the other moves towards a sense of understanding. And to be honest, both of them might be right. They're not necessarily wrong. They're just operating from different perspectives and essentially different worlds. And this is where relationships don't just break, they end up creating polarity, and not in a good way. And here's something I want you to sit with for a second. When you're in that moment and things are tense, when you've said something that you didn't mean, you're not just reacting from what happened, you're reacting from a pattern. One that was probably built a long time ago before this relationship even started. So this is what's happening to your nervous system in real time. Something triggers you, your system spikes, logic goes offline, and suddenly you're not really there anymore. You're protecting. From that state, you can't listen properly, you can't think clearly, and you can't respond with intention. You're just reacting. And then 5 minutes later, you're looking back thinking, why on earth did I do that? But here's where the real damage happens. It's not the conflict itself, it's that silent and disconnect after. When there's no repair, when you're not completing that loop, the brain doesn't just move on, it starts assigning meaning. Most of the time this turns inwards and your inner dialogue shifts to something must be wrong with me. This is the moment when your identity gets involved, and that changes a lot of things. There's a distinction that most people never learn. Who you are versus what you do. And those two things collapse into one, and every mistake feels like a verdict. Every conflict feels like a threat to your worth, and every interaction starts to carry more weight than it should. And all of this, the activation, the blame, and the identity stuff, it doesn't just affect how you fight, it also affects how you love. More importantly, how you love yourself. Love wants closeness. Desire needs distance. Love ends up stabilizing, and the desire as a function ends up creating disruption. And most long-term relationships slowly tip too far towards a sense of safety. And without their They've even realized that they lose that sense of aliveness. And two people trying to feel secure and feel alive, not knowing those are actually two very different systems that are pulling in completely opposite directions. So what do you do with all of this? Connection doesn't come through more talking. It comes through a safe space, through novelty, through choosing to see each other not as a role they play in your story, but as a person, a full, complicated, perfectly imperfect, still figuring it out person, just like you. So if you take one thing from this, relationships don't break because something went wrong. They break because nobody knew how to come back to one another. This isn't about being perfect. It's about repairing when you're both reacting, regulating when you spike, staying present, especially when it's the hardest thing to do in that moment. Because connection isn't something that you essentially just stumble into. It's something that you choose to work on, something you choose to build every single day. Just like you've probably built your business, or the building of your body, or the building of your home. It's the same principle of brick by brick, day by day, moment to moment, and recognizing that this is the person that you've chosen to do life with. Thank you for taking the time to dive into this work, be it for you and your partner. And the invitation is, if you want to dive a little bit more into the identity stuff, you can click around here. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper and you're curious about where you're leaking power and energy, feel free to take the power leak assessment in the description below. And as always, know that you have the ability to make the shift. Thank you for watching.